Hi, how's everyone doing today? This is Amy Hamilton, author of The Project Manager Life is a Project and The Consummate Communicator Character Traits of True Professionals. For those of you who've been following today, we are about halfway through 24 authors in 12 hours. And it has been an amazing journey, and we are featuring different authors today from James Woonsley. He is an Air Force veteran, and I want to make sure that we're focusing today as Veterans Day on veteran-owned organizations as well as some veteran authors that we're going to have. And I have with me today Ron Price, who's going to teach us how to play nice, and he has a couple different books on how to play nice. Ron, can you tell us about your books?
I can, Amy, and thank you so much. And thanks for doing this for veterans. My dad was a veteran. He was a captain in the Army during the World War II, and I've always admired that. I often think I probably should have, but life takes some turns sometimes. But in 2016, I wrote a book self-published through James, and he was such a great help and a blessing to me, called Play Nice in Your Sandbox at Work. And, I don't know if we hear the expression play nice in your sandbox so much anymore, Amy, but boy, I sure heard it growing up, that we got to get along with others. We got to share our toys. We got to resolve our differences. We got to get along. We can't always have it our way. We can't just throw sand in somebody's face and storm off. It's not a good way to do life. And so I was struck with that expression, play nice in your sandbox at work. And so the play is a 4-step model. How do you prevent trivial matters from blowing up on you and becoming a thing? Amy, can I assume you know what I'm talking about?
Oh, I absolutely know what you're talking about. Is the importance of getting along with others, and it can just be a very interesting experience when you are trying to get along with others, and it doesn't always work.
Little things, if you're not careful, can blow up on you and become something you don't need, want, to deserve. And so the play is, how do you prevent that from happening? The nice is, how do you resolve the significant differences that you are going to have with others with whom you interact on a regular basis in your work experience? You're just going to have them. How do you resolve those? Well, I reached out to James again in 2018, and he helped me produce Play Nice in Your Sandbox at Home. Again, very similar format. The play is prevent conflict at home. The nice is conflict at home. And they're entirely different tools, tips, and techniques in each. But again, designed to have healthier relationships. And I'm happy to say that yesterday came to a bookstore near you, book number 3 in the series, Play Nice in Your Sandbox at Church. And James did not help me with this one. I got this one published for the first time. I'm a published author. Ooh. But again, how do you get along with other people who you worship with, which should be a no-brainer, but isn't always. So I think that's a long answer to your short question, Amy. What thoughts do you have?
Well, I don't think it's necessarily a long answer to a short question, because I think that when you look at this concept of writing a book and then writing 3 books, and then you also have a workbook. I'm putting some of the different links to your books out here on the chat for anybody who's interested in purchasing these books. And a book is a powerful thing, and when you look at the different concepts you have. So I would like to focus on your first book, then, is Play Nice in Your Sandbox at Work. And do you think, based on where we are now with COVID and virtual work, that those rules still apply, or do you think that they may have shifted or changed at all?
Oh boy, we have about 3 hours for this interview. Is that what you told me?
We're hoping to wrap up in about 5
No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Obviously COVID changes a lot of things. There's no question about that. Boy, in some positive ways, but one of the main negative ways is we find ourselves spending much more time at home than we used to. And add to that the stress of COVID itself and people we know who are affected over ourselves, and the quarantine and the shutdown. And, to say that the environment is ripe for conflict might be the understatement of the year. And yet, having said that, Amy, we're still people. We're still human beings. We still need each other, even though we can get on each other's nerves and under each other's skin. I don't know how we get on nerves and under skin, but you know what I'm talking about. And so, yes, the skills still apply. Let me give you, for instance, if I may. Again, the play is an acronym. Each letter stands for a particular tool, tip, technique, tactic, call it what you want, strategy. The P is one of my favorites. It's push the pause button. And in the book, Amy, I tell a story about how I went to Walmart on December 24th, 2004. Does that date mean anything to you, December 24th? Does that sound familiar?
So I assume that you were doing some sort of Christmas shopping.
You got it last minute. Oh my, not the smartest move I've ever made. I have never seen a parking lot more full of cars than I
Yeah, either that or you just need some last minute cough syrup is the other one
Oh,
there on
something.
December 24th.
Something. You know, before I got out of the car, I stopped and I had a conversation that said, you are about to go into a building with hundreds, if not thousands, of idiots, jerks, maniacs, people all stressed out and frazzled and experiencing anything but holiday cheer. I said, you can join them if you wish, or you can choose your attitude. You don't have to get sucked into that negativity. And I won't tell the whole story here, Amy, but that's what I did. That's what I did. And I left Walmart with my sanity and my joy fully intact because I chose my attitude. You know, people get to work some days, they're already in a foul mood. They had a fight with their spouse, they had a fight with their teenager. If you're like me, you had to drive with fellow Americans. I'll put my drivers up with any for the worst that you have to deal with. You could get to work in a foul mood. Please don't walk into that workplace bringing your foul mood with you. Push the pause button. Have a conversation that says this day is off to a bad start, but I'm about to go into a place where there are people that I appreciate, people who expect a certain level of performance for me, and I'm going to deliver. I am choosing my attitude for this workday. Amy, what kind of workday are you more likely to have? Up, down, or neutral?
So I live in a fairly positive place, Ron. So
Good for
for
you.
me, the way I look at it is I read a book once and it was called Grateful Leadership. And I should remember the authors, but I don't on the top of my head. So I'll have to look it up and make sure I post for them. But the thing about grateful leadership is studies have actually shown, scientific studies, that you cannot be grateful and stressed at the same time. The two things cannot exist in your brain. So, take that, push that pause button and say, I am grateful to be here today. I'm grateful to be at work. I'm grateful that I have a job. And
Yeah.
especially right now in COVID, there's so many service workers. There's so many people who've been impacted. You read about the layoffs. So if you are fortunate enough to have a job that pays your bills and keeps that roof over your head, push that pause button and be grateful. So now we're going to talk about your next book. Let's
And
talk
Amy,
about.
before we do that, just real quickly, please push the pause button in the driveway too. You have rough days at work. Don't bring your lousy attitude into the home and ruin the evening for everybody else. We do it. We've all done it. But why? Push the pause button, collect yourself, make sure you contribute to a wonderful evening at home. So just wanted to throw that in, please.
Well, that was perfect. As my next question was, can we talk about your next book, which is going to be Play Nice at Home? So, so you beat me to it.
Yeah.
But besides the push the pause, what else can we do at home? Especially, you read now, domestic violence has increased. All of these things during COVID, depression, suicide. What can we do at home to make it a better place? Especially spending so much time in our homes.
Sure. You know, the L chapter comes to mind. Amy, look for the good. Look for the good. And this goes back to what you were just saying about gratitude. When you live with somebody long enough, it's easy to see their flaws, their faults, their shortcomings. If I ask people, hey, write down 10 faults of your mate or your family, whatever, it's not a challenge. It's not a challenge at all. But then I say, write down 10 positive qualities, 10 attributes that you admire. You know, sometimes that's a little trickier. But we need to force ourselves sometimes. Yes, the bad is there, but look for the good. Focus on the good. And again, ties so much in with the gratitude. Hey, they're willing to put up with you. That should go in their plus column.
Well, I know that a lot of people during Thanksgiving are really kind of looking at something every day to be grateful for. I'm going to put in this book. It's not one of James's books. It's just one of my favorite books I've read, Grateful Leadership. It's Judith Ohms. And since I just cited her, wanted to make sure I give her the credit for that, because
Oh yeah.
so incredibly powerful. And a lot of what Judith talks about in her book is when you acknowledge people's strengths first, like you were just saying, then you can say, okay, you know what I really appreciate about you is X, but there's something I want to talk to you about is Y. And people are so much more receptive if you approach them from a place that's positive first.
Yep. 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 In fact, it's funny you say that, Amy. I write about the XYZ technique. I got these from the folks at Prep Inc. When you have to voice a concern to somebody, don't go on the attack. Don't put that offensive. That's not going to get you anywhere positive. So the XYZ technique, when you do X in situation Y, I feel Z. When you show up late for the meeting, our meeting with the realtor, I felt disrespected. When whatever, you could also use it for positive. When you stopped off on the way home to get some ice cream, I felt so valued, so appreciated by you. XYZ technique. Yeah, don't attack the person, attack the behavior, and just let them know how that makes you feel. They're probably going to change it. They'll be more willing to respond to your concern.
And just as important as you said, attack the behavior, but hopefully don't attack the behavior, but wait until you're like in that calm space, that you've pushed that pause. You're in a place where you can, if you need to take a walk or count to 10 or whatever you need to do, so that when you do talk about it, you could do it in a way that's going to be constructive rather than destructive in those relationships.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And your third book that is just coming out now, Play Nice at Church. I would think, that church is a place where you should play nice anyway. So I'm very intrigued by this. What does that mean to play nice in church?
You would think that, wouldn't you, Amy? I often tell people it's the dumbest title I've ever heard of. Do we really need a book telling Christians they ought to get along and how to do it? I thought the Bible already did that pretty well. But, when I wrote the book, I solicited stories. I reached out to people and said, hey, tell me about times when God's people have not acted in a very God-honoring fashion. And, what's that expression? Be careful what you ask for, because I got them. And some of them made my heart sick. But again, it's just the same thing. The PLAY a four-step model to prevent conflict. Don't even let it happen. Don't avoid it. Don't try to, pretend it's not there. Prevent it from happening in the first place. The nice is how do you resolve the significant differences that, again, the problem with relationships, Amy, is that they are two or more imperfect people trying to get along with two or more other imperfect people, and expecting a perfect relationship is foolhardy at best. We're all, what somebody once called us, FHBs, fallible human beings. And so conflict is inevitable. I often say that. Conflict is inevitable. Damaged relationships are optional. Conflict can be a strengthening experience if you handle it well. So again, I in all the books, I include stories and anecdotes, a lot of humor. Humor keeps me young. I'm convinced of that. Laughter is one of the healthiest things I do. Goes along with gratitude, I would think. But I include stories along with tools, tips, and techniques to help people get along better with their brothers and sisters who they really want to do. It just gets frustrating at times.
And a really good point about conflict. And Patrick Lencioni, who wrote Five Dysfunctions of a Team, talks about artificial harmony, which is actually very, very harmful for long-term growth, and how we do need that healthy conflict and the ability to communicate. We are about halfway through this segment and time flies by. I do want to take a moment for those of you who are watching 24 Authors in 12 Hours Today. My books are available on Amazon for Kindle download free for the entire day, as well as if you buy print copies of the book, I will donate 10% of all proceeds today to the Wounded Warrior Foundation. If you are interested in volunteering or donating to the Wounded Warrior Foundation, I'm going to put that link into the chat. And just want to bring out again that I'm interviewing different authors from James Woosley's Freedom Press, veteran-owned business. And this is how I'm connected to Ron. And Ron and I are discussing his fabulous books, 3 of which he published through James. Did you also publish your workbook through James?
The workbook is in process. And,
okay, so the workbook is a work in progress.
Where I'm going to go with that, but yeah, that's in process right now. But I would reach out to James in a half a heartbeat. He's just a caring, giving, professional, talented man. He knows what he's doing. I endorse him heartily. So
as we go through the rest of the segment, I did want to reach out to you as well, Ron. And did you want to share any experiences or any other ties to any veteran organizations?
I would like to, Amy. I wish that I could. Again, my dad is my closest connection. He was in charge of postal affairs for the foreign theater during World War II, and of course, he was already done with that, and he didn't talk much about his experience. But I'm proud of my dad, as any son should be. He's gone now, but that especially makes me especially proud that he was able to serve in that way and lighten the burden for some of the folks who were facing incredible situations that I'll never be able to fully understand, or I can appreciate but not understand.
No, definitely for your family or your father, even though he's passed away. I mean, tremendous testament to the service to this country. So thank you, Ron. And what you're doing too is as a service through the different books that you're authoring, because playing nice, learning to work well with people in these different environments is absolutely crucial. So one of the things I wanted to say is that, I kind of, read some of the highlights of your books. Is there anything about your books that you would like to share that maybe particularly apply working in this virtual environment?
We didn't give a specific from the At Church book, so let me do that right now. And by the way, 100% of what I wrote in Play Nice in Your Sandbox at Work is applicable at home and at church. Probably 80% of what I wrote at home is applicable at work and at church. The part about parenting and sexual relations, that's probably not.
Hopefully we're not doing that in work and church.
Exactly right. That's exactly right. But probably about 50%, I'm just guessing, about 50% of what I wrote about at church is applicable at work and at home. But there's one chapter that I wrote at church that I think is my favorite of all time. It's the L chapter, and it's love yourself as you love your neighbor. Love yourself as you love your neighbor. Now, Amy, even non-believers are familiar with the expression, you should love your neighbor as you love yourself. That's become a proverb. Most everybody understands that. But Amy, that's the problem. That's the problem. We do love our neighbor the way we love ourselves, and most of us don't love ourselves. Dr. Robert Firestone and his daughter, Dr. Lisa Firestone, coined a term, the CIV, the critical inner voice. And Amy, I won't put you on the spot, but I know that you have heard the CIV in your days. You still do. We all do. We hear that voice in our minds that says, oh, you're not this enough, or you're not that enough, or you're too much this, or you're too much that. And after a while, that gets old, and we get down on ourselves. And after a while, we're going to take that out on others because we still have to live here. We can't beat ourselves up nonstop. We're going to take it out on others. I wrote about in that work, I think, hurting people are going to hurt people. And that's especially true during this COVID fiasco. If somebody's hurting, again, they're going to take it out on somebody else. And it makes that old song so true. You always hurt the ones you love. You hurt those that are in striking distance. So my counsel to folks is work on self-acceptance. And again, gratitude. I'm so glad you brought that up. Can go a long way towards that. Are you perfect? No. Does anybody else think you're perfect? No. Does anybody expect you to be perfect? Well, if they do, that's their problem, not yours. Work on accepting yourself, because the more you can accept yourself, the more you can accept others. The more you can love and appreciate yourself, the freer you will be to love and appreciate others. Does that make sense, Amy?
So it does, and there's two threads I'd really like to kind of pull from that, Ron. The first of which is I think that for everything that we do, we can look at the negative and the positive. And you said COVID fiasco, and I think you're trying to be a little cheeky with that. But one of the things that we've talked about in some of the other segments today is, but COVID also has brought us so many different new opportunities. And if we look at the negative of COVID, and we're trapped in our houses. If we looked at the negative of COVID with people losing their jobs, but so many other people have said, I was able to pivot, I was able to change things, I was able to pursue projects I couldn't imagine before. And another one of those things right now is 24 authors in 12 hours. I don't think I would have ever come up with this if I was still able to take my book to a bunch of indie bookstores and get it signed. So I think there's an important thing of not looking at everything at the fiasco, but looking at from opportunity.
Right. But it's been a huge challenge, and you're right. And that's another point, Amy. I often ask people to think back over the last 6 months to a year to your worst day, a day you don't ever want to experience again. On that day, ask yourself this question: how many billions of people on this planet would trade places with you? They take your worst day, you take theirs. And as Americans, I think we can honestly say, no matter what our condition. Now, some of the days were bad. I'm not minimizing that. But there are some conditions around this world that we couldn't begin to think about trading places with. Am I right on that?
I don't want to generalize to all Americans. I mean, there's people right now, domestic abuse is high. I don't want to in any way ever judge anyone, but I do want to say for many of us, our worst days are not even comparable to other people's worst days. And we need to consider what they're experiencing and going through, because we just need to be aware. And that goes into the thing that you mentioned. And I heard someone say, instead of the golden rule, there should be a platinum rule. And I think it goes very close into your kind of shift, which is don't treat others as you want to be treated, understand their culture, understand their perspective, and also treat them how they want to be treated. And what are your thoughts on that?
No, absolutely. I knew where you were going. I've been fortunate to hear that as well. And it's great. It's so egocentric and self-centered to think that, oh, I like this, so everybody else should like this. No, they don't. But if you could take the time to get out of yourself and understand others and treat them the way they want to be treated, you're spot on. If you're looking for an argument, you came to the wrong place.
No, I mean, it just really shows you the importance of empathy and really kind of looking at the perspective that, we each have our unique stories. We each have our unique backgrounds. And, like you've said, whether it's work or home, church, or whatever the religious practice that you have, spiritual practices, take a look, step back and recognize everyone's different, everyone's unique. And that when we recognize our differences in a loving fashion and a caring fashion, it's really going to change the dynamics.
Yeah. I cite in one of my books, don't ask me which one, and I can't remember the author, but there was a book back in the day, I'm Okay, You're Okay.
Yes.
And there's a lot of value in that. That was a bestseller for like 2-3 years, I believe. But so often we act like I'm okay, you're not, or you're okay, I'm not. And yeah, those are lose-lose propositions.
Yeah, and I think so important right now, COVID, the elections, a lot of people right now have viewed people who don't believe the same way they do as the enemy, instead of realizing as people with different perspectives.
Well, you think? Yeah, no, you're spot on. So yeah, absolutely. And then add the political climate and the racial unrest, and no, these are times that try men's souls. We are there. We are there.
We definitely have an opportunity to be better, to do better. I think books are such a powerful way that we can educate ourselves, that we can change. One of the things that's really come out through today is for children to have that love of reading, so that as they grow older, they can gain this knowledge. We are wrapping up our time. So before I depart, and we have to depart today, are there any questions or anything that you want to bring up that I haven't asked you a question about?
I want to join your offer in my own way. Play Nice in Your Sandbox at Church is just out. I made it to the top 100 in one category yesterday. That was nice. I'd like people to have that book. And if they're willing to go to Amazon and buy it, send me an email, ron@ronprice.com. That's easy enough, ron@ronprice.com. I will send you a digital copy of Play Nice at Work and Play Nice at Home. And I will also make a contribution to Wounded Warriors for any proceeds that come from that. So send me an email, ron@ronprice.com. Just say, yep, I bought your book. It's honor system. I trust you. I'll send you a digital copy of the other two, and I'll be so grateful.
Thank you so much. And what a valuable thing, your willingness also to contribute to the Wounded Warrior Project as we wrap up this segment of 24 authors in 12 hours on Veterans Day. Such an important cause. Thank you so much, Ron.
Thank you, Mamie. It's been a delight. Enjoy the rest